Esther never imagined that one day she would become a queen. She hadn't been born into royalty. She had grown up without a father or mother, raised by her older cousin Mordecai, who cared for her as if she were his own daughter. They lived in the vast Persian Empire, far from the homeland of their Jewish ancestors. Esther was young, beautiful, and gentle, but her life seemed ordinary until one decision from a king changed everything. King Ahasuerus, ruler of the Persian Empire, was searching for a new queen. Young women from across the kingdom were brought to the royal palace, and Esther was among them. Before she entered the palace, Mordecai gave her an important warning. She should not reveal that she was Jewish, so Esther kept her identity secret. Month after month, she lived among the other young women preparing to appear before the king. When Esther's turn finally came, something remarkable happened. The king favored her above all the others. He placed the royal crown upon her head. The orphan girl raised by Mordecai had become Queen Esther of Persia. But neither Esther nor Mordecai knew that her position would soon become a matter of life and death. Among the king's most powerful officials was a man named Haman. Haman had been elevated above the other officials, and people were commanded to bow before him. But Mordecai refused. Day after day, Haman saw Mordecai standing while others bowed. His pride turned into rage. When Haman discovered that Mordecai was Jewish, punishing one man was no longer enough for him. He wanted revenge against an entire people. Haman approached the king and claimed that there was a group of people scattered throughout the empire whose laws were different from everyone else's. He convinced the king to issue a terrible decree. On a chosen day, the Jewish people throughout the Persian Empire were to be destroyed. Messages carrying the order were sent throughout the kingdom. When Mordecai learned what had happened, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and mourned bitterly. Across the empire, Jewish families wept. Their lives had suddenly been given an expiration date. Inside the palace, Esther initially did not understand why Mordecai was mourning. She sent a messenger to him. Mordecai told her everything. Then he asked Esther to go before the king and beg for mercy for her people. But there was a problem. Even the queen could not simply walk into the king's presence without being summoned. Persian law was clear. Anyone who entered the king's inner court without being called could be put to death. There was only one exception. If the king extended his golden scepter, that person's life would be spared. Esther had not been summoned by the king for 30 days. Going to him could cost her life. She sent word back to Mordecai explaining the danger. His answer would change everything. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. Then Mordecai gave her something even more powerful to consider. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther understood. Perhaps becoming queen had never been about wealth, comfort, or a crown. Perhaps she had been placed there for this very moment. She sent a message to Mordecai. Gather all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. Then Esther made her decision. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. For 3 days, Esther prepared herself. Then the moment came. She dressed in her royal robes and walked toward the inner court of the palace. The king was sitting on his throne. He looked up. Esther stood before him. For a moment, her future rested entirely on what he would do next. Then the king lifted his hand and extended the golden scepter toward her. Esther was safe. She approached and touched its tip. "What is it, Queen Esther?" the king asked. He promised to hear her request. But Esther did not immediately reveal Haman's plan. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. At the banquet, the king again asked what Esther wanted. Still, she waited. She invited them to another banquet the following day. Haman left the palace delighted. He had been invited personally by the queen. But as he passed Mordecai and saw that Mordecai still refused to honor him, his happiness disappeared. Filled with anger, Haman ordered a tall gallows to be built, intending to have Mordecai executed. He believed his victory was almost complete. But that night, something unexpected happened. The king could not sleep. He ordered the records of his reign to be read to him. There he discovered something he had apparently forgotten. Years earlier, Mordecai had uncovered a plot to assassinate the king. His actions had saved the king's life. "What honor has Mordecai received for this?" the king asked. "Nothing," his servants replied. At that very moment, Haman entered the palace, planning to ask permission to execute Mordecai. Before he could make his request, the king asked him a question. What should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman immediately assumed the king was speaking about him. He imagined royal robes, the king's horse, and a public celebration through the city. The king loved the idea. Then came the words Haman never expected. "Go at once, get the robe and the horse, and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew." Haman was devastated. The man he wanted to kill was publicly honored, and Haman himself had to lead the celebration. But his humiliation was only beginning. The next day, Haman joined Esther and the king for the second banquet. Once again, the king asked Esther what she desired. This time, Esther answered. She revealed that she was Jewish. Then she told the king that she and her people had been condemned to destruction. The king was furious. "Who is he?" he demanded. "Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing?" Esther looked toward Haman. An adversary, an enemy. This vile Haman. Haman was terrified. The king discovered that Haman had even prepared a gallows for Mordecai, the very man who had saved the king's life. Haman's plan had turned against him. He was executed on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. But there was still a problem. The decree against the Jewish people had already been issued under the king's authority and could not simply be revoked. So the king authorized Esther and Mordecai to issue another decree, allowing the Jewish people to defend themselves against anyone who attacked them. When the appointed day arrived, the Jewish people were able to defend themselves against their enemies. What had been intended as a day of destruction became a day of deliverance. Mordecai was elevated to a position of great authority, and Esther, the orphan girl who once hid her identity, had become the queen who courageously revealed it to save her people. The Jewish people celebrated their deliverance, and those events became the foundation of the festival known as Purim, remembered from generation to generation. Esther's story is not about a woman who never felt fear. It is about a woman who chose courage when fear could have controlled her. She could have remained silent. She could have protected her position. Instead, she risked everything for others. An orphan became a queen. A queen became a protector. And at the moment when an entire people faced destruction, Esther discovered why she might have been placed in the palace in the first place, for such a time as this.